All right, here we go, and welcome to our now third installment of Cornell Alumni Virtual Q&A. This tonight, Halloween Eve, we have a very exciting guest. As a sports fan, I'm excited, and I think a lot of the Cornell community is excited as well. Sarah Spain, class of 2002, is with us. Sarah, thanks for taking time out of your, I know, very busy schedule to spend some time with us tonight.
Sure. It looks like I already lost my lower third that I just created, so I think that shows you I'm a novice at the Google Hangout. So if I mess anything up, that's me. I've already shown you that I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm not sure Google's going to stick around very long if they can't make more user-friendly technology.
Right.
But thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here. All right, here we go, and welcome to our now third installment. I think my first question is, well, first let's give a little intro as to who Sarah is. Sarah was raised and grew up just north of Chicago, and her time at Cornell was spent doing a lot on the track and field, so probably a lot of time spent in the rustic confines of Barton Hall.
Yes.
Where she was a co-captain, but not only that, it turns out you're actually really smart. Top 15% of your class, and occasionally 4.0 GPA. That's not too shabby. And now Sarah is a very popular broadcaster for ESPN, based in Chicago, and so we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, as well as her time at Cornell. So, Sarah, my first question, and then we'll jump into the questions that people in the chat have. And again, if you're tuned in and you're watching, please feel free to submit questions via the chat, because we're here to answer your questions, not mine. We want to focus on the audience, so please submit them at will. But first, I'll kick things off by just asking you, Sarah. So you go back to when you were 17 or 18 years old. What was it about Cornell that made you want to go there? I mean, you're from the Chicago area. There's clearly a number of outstanding universities there, especially for someone that ended up going into broadcasting like the Northwestern. But what was it about Cornell and Ithaca?
Well, I knew I wanted a combination of sports and academics, and I did field hockey, basketball, and track in high school, and I was getting recruited for all of them at different kind of schools. Like, a lot of the basketball schools recruiting me were not as good academically, but better sports-wise. A lot of the track teams were more of the Ivies, and field hockey was very limited. A lot of D3 schools, Northwestern, and a couple Ivies. And so I kind of really wanted to just find that balance of the best school I could go to while also still doing sports, and I wanted to be Division I, so that I could try to push myself instead of being a big fish in a small pond. So my number one choice actually was Dartmouth. And I went on a visit there. I know, I probably shouldn't admit that, but it all worked out. It all worked out for the best. I went there on a visit, and I loved the old, feeling of it, and it's a great place. And I wasn't sure about Cornell because, I hadn't heard as many good things locally, because the person that they sent to give the Cornell speech was sort of terrible. I hope that they've replaced that person. But I left that thinking, like, meh, it doesn't seem that great. And then they flew me out for my recruiting trip, and once I came out to visit, I was like, oh my gosh, this place is totally different than what that person sold it as. And yeah, it was a perfect place to balance getting to do track and get a great education. And I was so happy after the fact, because it's bigger than Dartmouth, and there's so much more of an alumni connection and so much more to do beyond just being stuck in the middle of nowhere and going to, like, eating clubs or whatever they have.
Lots of trees. Yeah, I was up there not too long ago. People talk about Ithaca being isolated.
Oh no, that's
Dartmouth is quite isolated.
Yeah.
So how are you able to, obviously your resume speaks for itself with regards to your academics. How were you able to do so well in the classroom while balancing a demanding athletic schedule as well?
I think it was a couple things. I think I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be an English major because I loved writing, and it was something that came sort of naturally to me. And I do think my friends who were engineers, pre-med, people like that, I could not even touch the kind of work that they were doing. So not to say that being an English major is inherently easier, but that's what comes naturally to me. And I'm a massive nerd and a massive overachiever. So I really have always even when people said like no one's going to care what your grades are after school, I still had to get A+s on everything, do every extra credit possible. I stayed up really late. I was the dork that had all of her notes color coded. So yeah, I mean, I really just applied myself. I also didn't drink at all till I was a junior at Cornell.
So when it was legal.
What's that?
So when it was legal, you mean?
Well, I wasn't quite. I was close. I was close because I was too young for my year. But I wasn't 21 till my senior year. But I made it pretty close. And that was just a combination of things. I have a crazy personality sober, so I never really felt like I needed to drink to open up to people.
Right.
And I went to lots of parties and I had lots of fun and I did what everybody else did. I just did it sober, which makes it a lot easier to study when you get home.
Yeah, well, I think it worked out pretty well for you.
I'm making up for lost time.
yeah, I can tell following the Twitter feeds and your Tailgate series, which we'll get into in a bit. But we have a question coming in from actually a current member of the Cornell track team.
All right.
And they want to know what's your best memory representing CUTF.
Oh, that would have to be
it can be more than one.
Well, it would be obviously winning Ivy League championships, winning HEPs. And what was sort of unfortunate is my junior year, I tore my Achilles, and I had been a heptathlete. And when I came back, I tried to continue doing heptathlon, but it just wasn't going to happen with my leg being completely restructured. So I ended up just doing javelin. So I didn't really have an indoor event the same way. So I was the captain when we won it for the first time indoors. It was at Barton Hall. We were hosting, and it was amazing, but it was kind of a bummer to not be able to actually compete and get points for the team. But that still is the best one. The first time, they always say you never forget. And we won it in outdoors too, which was also amazing. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think we won 7 to 8 straight HEPS championships after that. So I like to just give myself all the credit for leading the team in the right direction.
Well, I think you have a case to do that.
I don't know about that. There were plenty of talented people scoring the points, but I was a good motivator.
So you're running track, and you decided not to take an Olympic career route?
Oh, I wasn't good enough for that. I did Junior Olympics and stuff in high school, national meets, and I think I really hit my ceiling at Cornell. I was not on the Olympic track. I was in the right place to be pushed but also be successful. And then after the Achilles tear, there's not a chance. I mean, it's in other sports you can be a little bit slower, you can jump a little bit less high, but in basketball, say, as long as you've still got decent burst and your basketball IQ, you can continue to play. But in track, if you're not jumping as far or as high or running as fast, that's the whole event. So you're kind of SOL.
Well, I think you did all right. I mean, I believe you won an award for most career points.
Yeah, just for every year a senior is like the senior with the most career points over their 4-year career. So I was very much like in life. I consider myself a jack of all trades and a master of none, and that was exactly why heptathlon was perfect for me, because I would go to meets and I would get like usually second or third, sometimes first in like 7 events, which is a lot of points. Helps the team a lot. So.
Well, I think that's why you can justify taking all the credit.
There you go. As long as you're going to give it to me, I'll take it.
Right, I'm happy to give it to you. So you talked about memories on the track team. What are some of your fondest memories from just your time at Cornell, living on campus, and things of that nature?
Well, absolutely my roommates. My junior and senior year, we got a house on College Avenue, right where all the bars and restaurants and stuff stop. We were like across the street and one over from Jason's convenience store, and it was 3 stories with a basement, so there's 15 of us that all lived together junior and senior year. Just the most amazing girls who I still see at least probably 3 or 4 times a year for weddings or baby showers or birthday parties, and we're all still very close, all 15 of us, which is pretty amazing, I think, because we're spread out all over the place. So pretty much any time I spent with that crew is my best memory. But school-wise, I very distinctly have these deja vu moments of freshman year walking around campus with my Walkman because I didn't have even a Discman at the time.
Yeah.
My Walkman with like Indigo Girls and Dave Matthews Band and like whatever I was really into at the time, and just walking through campus and feeling like I was having the most quintessential college experience anyone could ever have because it's such a gorgeous campus, and I felt like I was surrounded by so many smart people, and I really felt completely like blessed and lucky the entire time I was there to be sort of balancing really well, getting to do the sports stuff, having amazing friends who were so much fun, and then getting to feel like I was in a movie about a great East Coast college. So I also got to give a speech at the night before graduation to all the tenured faculty and the newly tenured faculty, which was a really big honor for me. I felt very proud that I got selected for that.
What words of wisdom did you bestow upon them?
I think it was basically how I very definitely included that. That's my dog. Sorry, making noise.
Oh, that's okay.
I very definitely
animal-friendly hangout.
Yeah, he's welcome. I included in the speech that I had not yet found a job, but that the faculty I'd worked with was so talented and wonderful that I no doubt felt confident heading into the work world that they had prepared me. And I really just said that so that someone that was there, one of the trustees or perhaps the faculty, might be able to get me a job, which actually happened. So it worked out quite well. But yeah, I mean, I think I totally winged it, which my parents, when I told them I was winging it, they literally started sweating and turned and they still have told me that was the day that they kind of were like, all right, we think she can do this whole like TV hosting thing, because she just got up in a room full of like all these really distinguished people and the president of the university and all these people without even writing a speech and nailed it. So I think my one great gift in life is talking.
Well, I think apparently you have good things to say based on the career path right now. So I'd say just keep going with it. So speaking of campus life, I'm going to ask you real quick, and this is I think this is a question on a lot of people's minds and an ongoing debate really, and that's when it comes to on-campus food truck, are you a Louis Lunch person or a hot truck person?
You know, I always get asked this question, and I always say hot truck because it was closer, but I'm always sort of like being a fraud when I answer because I think I only went to hot truck once, and I don't think I ever went to Louis Lunch, partly because I wasn't drunk all the time, and those are usually places that you go when you're drunk.
Right.
But also later in my Cornell career when I was drunk, we would go to Mama T's and get pizza.
Oh, okay.
Because we were older by then and we lived in college town. So when I was a freshman and sophomore and I lived closer to Louis Lunch and Hot Truck, I just wasn't doing the late night thing. I was an athlete, you know?
Right.
My body was a shrine.
Right. Body was a shrine. Well, now you're a professional broadcaster, so you have to abide by the same rules. Borderline
professional eater now.
Yeah,
Again,
well, yeah, the tailgates will do that to you. You could take a run at Adam Richman's crown.
Exactly. I hope not, because we all saw what happened to him.
Yeah, that's a tough gig right there, the professional eating. But yeah, it certainly is true. You know, you go back to your college campus, and all of a sudden, all those, food establishments that you thought were just absolute gems, all of a sudden you realize when you don't have a 12-pack in you, they don't quite hold up all the time.
Although there is a pita pit in Chicago, and I've gone there a couple times when I was overserved, and it's still absolutely delicious when you're drunk. I actually went there, like Pearl Jam played at Wrigley, and it got delayed for hours and hours, so they didn't finish till 2:30, and then nobody could get out of Wrigley, and it was crowded. So we took one of those petty cabs, only far enough to get to Pita Pit, so I could eat a pita until we could find a cab. It was amazing.
Well, the things you'll do for a pita sometimes.
That's right.
And I love the overserved terminology. One of my favorite phrases.
It's the adult way to say wasted.
All right. Well, I don't want to. We have some guest or audience questions coming in, so I don't want to leave people hanging. This question says, Spain, I dig your Twitter game. How much time do you spend cultivating your persona?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. You know, I'm sure I'm supposed to have a good answer for this that will be useful to others, but I don't spend too much time. I think the only time I really spend cultivating what I write on Twitter is typing and then hitting erase delete it before I accidentally post something that my employers wouldn't like.
Right.
ESPN is a Disney-owned company, so we do have a few more restrictions than maybe other companies. And as soon as you become any sort of public figure, I think you just have to really watch what you say. So most of the time, it's just me, puking out all of my thoughts onto Twitter. But I am aware very much of wanting to maintain who I am, which I think is one reason why people do like to follow me on Twitter or do like to follow my work, is I sort of toe this line between fan and professional in a way that I think it's sometimes hard to balance, because you want people to respect you as a journalist, but at the same time I think there are too many sports journalists who go too far over that line, and they don't seem to have that connection anymore to what got them into the job in the first place. And I never want to lose that. I never want to be someone who says, I don't even go to games anymore because it's just work now. Because the whole point of doing this is to be able to do something every day that I love and don't consider a job. So that counts for everything I do, but particularly on Twitter, making sure that I don't become someone who, like, oh, I don't have time to respond to these people, or like I'm too big time, or starting to compose tweets that are sort of fake to like make me seem like something other than who I am. So.
Right, I mean, it's a great way to remain authentic.
Yeah.
And I think, somebody like Joe Buck has taken some heat for some of the comments he made about saying he's not even really interested in sports. He just does it for a living, and I can see why that's something that you want to distance yourself from. But, you have 46,000 followers, so I think
yeah. Well, I'm addicted to Twitter. Like, if the person wanted to know how much time I spend on Twitter as opposed to how much time I spend crafting my brand, then it would be too much and all the time. My phone is essentially always around, and my boyfriend sometimes makes fun of me for, oh, are you tweeting that after something happens? And I'm usually saying yes. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great way to get your brand out, and specifically I think for female sportscasters, where there's often this stigma that we don't know what we're talking about, or we just got our jobs because we have a pretty face or something. I think if you can react in the moment to things that are happening on TV, if you can respond and interact with people about their questions, then they know you're not reading off a teleprompter, you're not being fed the information, that you really are as invested as you seem, and that comes through, I think, really well on Twitter, where it's a in-the-moment sort of medium.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Something I've never really thought of is you can really kind of prove your mettle by engaging in these real-time social networks. Well, we have another question coming in, and so I want to get to this. This person says, this is a Cornell alum, says, hi, Sarah, thanks for doing this. I graduated in 2012 and currently work for ESPN in their LA office. So I've always tried to follow the careers of Cornell alumni working in sports. I was wondering if you've had any interaction with Jeremy Schaap and or Keith Olbermann over the years, and if you guys had the opportunity to swap Cornell stories.
I actually briefly crossed paths with Jeremy Schaap at the ESPYs this year, but he was mid-conversation. We were in the same elevator, and I didn't want to interrupt him just to drop the Cornell, but maybe next time. Keith Olbermann, I actually have not met him in person, but he tweeted about going back to Cornell to speak probably in the last year and a half or so, and I sent him a message like, hey, I'm a Cornell alum too, and we started chatting on direct message on Twitter, and since then, sorry, since then, he gets really...
Olbermann has a lot of fans.
Yeah, that's Fletcher's response to Olbermann. He's like, I don't know about that guy. But yeah, we started direct messaging about sort of Cornell memories, and his first job was almost at ESPN Radio before even, and in Chicago. So we said, we have some similarities, and so yeah, we message each other every once in a while on Twitter, and there is a good possibility that I might end up getting to do his show every once in a while.
Oh, great.
Going forward, which would be great opportunity for me, and would be really fun, because that we would drop far too many Cornell references just to annoy people. And actually, Christopher Harris, who does fantasy for ESPN, is a Cornell guy too.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. The person that asked the question, you now have a new ESPN Cornell alum connection to talk about. Yeah, I think Olbermann was back here to dedicate a new addition to the WVBR studios that I think he helped fund. So
cool.
We're always really appreciative of those types of gifts and support from Mr. Olbermann, and be great to see you guys on the same show. We can start to distance ourselves from Andy on The Office and
I can't tell you how many times I've gotten that. Yeah, but I actually, the worst part is too. I was when I lived out in LA, the writers' strike. That I don't know if anyone remembers it. It was however long ago now, 8 years maybe, or 7 years when the writers' strike happened. And I worked at Fox Sports at the time, and the writer's strike was happening right outside where I worked. So I just went with a friend and a camera to do some interviews out there, and he was there. Andy Bernard was there, and I knew a guy who wrote for The Office. So I went up and said, "Oh my gosh, I know Gene, and I actually went to Cornell, and oh my gosh, like everyone always tells me your name." And he was like, "Oh, okay." Like I could tell he was just like so sick of hearing about it. And he's not into sports at all. Like he's a musician. He genuinely is into like bluegrass and stuff. He's not a sports fan. So I think I kind of went way over his head trying to talk about, all the Cornell references on the show. But it was fun nonetheless. And I do have this. My boyfriend just brought this over next to my TV.
Oh, there it is.
In the office, he has that behind his desk on the show. So I, of course, had to go find one.
I think that's the source of a lot of debate, because I think alumni, after seeing that on The Office, were really they wanted it, and I think the store actually didn't have it in stock anymore. So I don't even know if
I guess I got in before it.
Yeah. I don't even.
Bitter.
I don't know if that item is even currently available on the market. So you may have a very valuable piece of nostalgia there.
All right. So I'll get Andy Bernard to sign it, and then I'll really be set.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing right now with ESPN. And first and foremost, so you grew up in the Chicago area, and now you're kind of based in Chicago on behalf of ESPN. Is that kind of the dream of a lifetime, to be covering Chicago sports for the biggest sports media company in the world?
It is pretty much the dream of a lifetime, yeah. My only other big dream is to be on SNL, and I'm not getting any closer to that. So I think I've really gotten as close as I'm going to get to the dream job. But yeah, I was living in LA for 6 years after school, and I really started to make headway in broadcasting and sports when I was out there. And when it started to get more like I was going to be getting a bigger job, I really thought if I was going to get a bigger role, I wanted it to be in Chicago. LA has a lot of great qualities, but it cannot hold a candle to Chicago when it comes to sports towns and people really being invested, because that's really all you got, especially when it gets cold out. If you don't have the Bears and the Blackhawks and the Bulls to follow, it's a tough place to be in the winter. So people really rally around that. And Hollywood always has the entertainment side and going to the beach and getting outside. So I wanted to come back here and do it, and especially because of my insane love for Michael Jordan and the Bulls. I was growing up at just the peak time to have seen every championship and watch every single game and have every DVD and Michael Jordan candy and Michael Jordan shirts and shoes and posters and everything under the sun. I had to listen to Be Like Mike on my Walkman before every single race in track and every jump I did. So I was totally obsessed. So to come back and be, working with the Bulls and interviewing Derrick Rose and, having the guys like Stacey King who were on those 90s Bulls team now be on the station with me in Chicago on the radio station, it's sort of like it comes on gradually, so it's not a total blow your mind kind of thing. Right. But every once in a while you pause and think, oh my God, like 12-year-old me would be fainting right now.
When you, based on some of the images on your website, you ended up meeting Michael Jordan.
I have met him several times. He may or may not have a restraining order against me. I met him a couple times, and it was the first I met him at his restaurant when I was in high school, and it was so brief. We just went like this as he was leaving his restaurant, and so then a couple years later, actually when I was home for break from Cornell, we were working out at the same gym. So I spoke to him for just a couple seconds, but he was on his way out again. So I finally was covering the Super Bowl a couple years ago. He was at Dwight Freeney's charity event, hidden in the very back of the VIP, and I just wouldn't let him get away without taking a picture with me. And I felt so bad because I've read all these Jordan books about, how hard it is for him to just be a normal guy and not get bothered. And so I didn't want to be one of those people, but at the same time I was like, I got to get this picture. Like, I have to do it. I've been so in love with him forever. And so I just pulled out all the stops. I was like, when I was little, I used to stand on top of my car and look over your gate so I could see inside your house. When you got divorced, my mom said I still had a chance. Like, I was really saying inappropriate things. And he finally was like, okay, fine, let's just take this picture. He was like, I'm never going to get rid of this girl. And then I went to the opening of his restaurant, and then I managed to finagle my way into his son's high school graduation party that Drake and Lil Wayne were performing at. And I think that was really when he was like, all right, what are you doing here? How did you get in here? And are you safe?
You weren't really kidding about the restraining order, it sounds like.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the only one I have. Like every other athlete that I've met, it's very cool, and I admire their talent, but they're just like us. They're just really good at sports, except for Michael Jordan, because that is like the entire reason I think I'm in this business. It's the entire reason I was so into sports. Just a massive part of who I am stemmed from growing up and watching the Bulls and watching Inside Stuff and watching, all the shows and coverage really inspired a lot of what I do. So
speaking of that, I'm going to jump over to another audience question, and they asked, who is your favorite celebrity/athlete that you've interviewed, and why?
Well, I've never gotten to actually interview Michael, so that takes him out of the running, and we can move on to someone else. There are a bunch of them. There's tons of guys and gals that are so nice. Swin Cash from the WNBA Sky and I have become, friends off the court and outside of work because she's just a fantastic person. She's going to start doing some more work for ESPN and even more so when she retires because she's awesome. But the ones that I remember the most and I like working with the most usually are the ones with the best and funniest personalities, because my approach to sports is always this sort of combination of entertainment and sports. I did Second City in LA, and I love all of the sort of bringing out player personalities and bringing out the lighter side of things as opposed to straight news. So there's a guy, Christopher Stieg, who used to be on the Blackhawks. He's now on the Florida Panthers. And, I mean, this kid he just didn't care at all what people thought of him. He was hilarious. I got him to rap Fergie Glamorous in the locker room while his whole team's watching him. It became sort of his calling card. So then he then rapped at the Blackhawks Stanley Cup rally parade after they won it all. So people like that, really the fun ones that have great personalities and are willing to sort of mess around and have fun with it. Peanut Tillman from the Bears is another one of those. He has a great personality, really sarcastic. It's getting harder to point them out because at this point it's been, now a straight 3.5 years, 4 years of meeting people one after the other and being like, wow, I can't believe I met that person. They were really cool, or they weren't that cool, or whatever. So.
Somebody just asked seems like a follow-up question. I think they're asking have you ever interviewed Scottie Pippen?
I did an event with Scottie for Nike, doing some stuff for high school hoops around Chicago at the United Center. So it was a very quick sort of interview just for that event, sort of asking Scottie a couple of questions and what message he would have to the high schoolers in attendance about, their play and how to get better at hoops or whatever. So it wasn't a real interview, but it was a fun event, and it was pretty cool to share the spotlight with him in a way as opposed to just watching him, and to be on the court with him was pretty cool.
Side note, somebody else was wondering what your dog is going to be dressed up as for Halloween.
Well, my dog's name is Fletch, and he's partly named for the Chevy Chase character in the movie Fletch.
Yep.
He actually has, his prized possession is a signed headshot from Chevy Chase that says "To Fletch Roll Over, Chevy Chase," in the full Fletch outfit. So he's a very spoiled dog, and that was his Halloween costume last year, the Afro and Lakers jersey, and he gamely wore it twice and didn't try to get it off his head or anything. And so I think he's going to be Fletch again this year, mainly because we've been really busy and haven't had time to find a new outfit. But he has also been Snoopy as the Flying Ace. He wore the aviator cap
wow.
and had Woodstock on his back for a pet parade because we're losers. And yeah, he's dressed up. He has a Cornell shirt that he wears. He's got a Bears jersey. He's a pro.
Wow, I was not prepared for that much diversity in terms of his Halloween attire. I'm pretty impressed. And I think the name Fletch that's a very solid dog name.
Solid.
So let's talk a little bit more about you at ESPN. So right now, one of your big features is the No Spain, No Game Tailgate Tour. I'm curious, so I guess people might not know exactly what that is, so if you want to talk a little bit about what that is and what your favorite spot has been to date.
Sure. So we went to Nashville. We were gonna head down out of town for vacation, and on the way out, we decided to drive down to Nashville, where my boyfriend's sister lives, and go to the Bears and Titans game. And I'd been to some away games for the Bears, usually Lambeau, like places that are close by, but I hadn't gone on a big trip to a city that I'd never been to before. And I loved that experience of being there to go watch my team, but also sort of getting immersed in the local culture and having tons of people that were from, Chicago and there to root on the Bears being there as well, made for a really cool atmosphere. We actually drank Nashville out of beer. Their main strip of bars, this is not made up. The main strip of bars in Nashville had so many people there from Chicago, drinking and celebrating the Bears win, which was like 58-20 or something, that they ran out of beer, which was, I felt it was a tip of our cap of them saying, all right, Chicago, you gave it to us good. We can't handle you. But
that
anyway,
goes back to you making up for lost time.
Exactly. The point is that it inspired me to pitch this to ESPNW, which is so I do radio for the radio station here in Chicago, ESPN 1000, and then I'm a columnist, writer, and do video stuff for ESPNW.com, which is a branch of the national website, sort of geared towards female athletes and sports fans, but we cover men's sports and women's, and I have a feeling most of the people reading a lot of my stuff are men, judging from my Twitter interactions and stuff. So, but I pitched it to them, and I said, I want to do a series of tailgating videos that are not just in a parking lot. I want it to be something where you sort of actually see what the city is like. And if you went there for a trip, this is what it would feel like. Not just going to the game itself, but the day of fun that you'd have before. So I'm doing 9 cities. Chicago was the first, and then 8 after that. And Pittsburgh was really cool. We started at this Duquesne incline that overlooks the water where the 2 stadiums are, went to a couple bars on Carson Street, and then hit up the area where both fields are right next to each other. And there was a Pirates game letting out before the Steelers game came on. And there's some bars, and people were tailgating on their boats, pulling up. People were taking a ferry across the water to get to the game. So there's a whole lot going on, and it was a really fun one to do. But I think my favorite so far was actually last weekend, which was Denver. And I had never been to Denver before, and now I totally get why nobody wants to ever move away from there, because it's gorgeous and super fun, and there's a lot going on, and Broncos Stadium is awesome. So it's been really fun and very cool to try to find things outside of the norm to sort of display about what game day's like. So.
Well, I think I mentioned to you before we did this interview that I was a little bitter that you weren't making your way up to Buffalo, being that
they almost made the cut. Maybe next year.
I am just a pathetically sad, lifelong Bills fan. But no, it's interesting because I've been to probably over 30 Bills home games in my life, and I've never been on the road to see them play.
Yeah,
so
I think that's true for a lot of people. I think it's true for a lot of people, and that was kind of fairly true for me. I saw the Bears in San Diego when I lived in LA, and I've gone to Lambeau, but I hadn't gone that many places to go see them elsewhere, and I think it's very cool to kind of get the experience of what it's like in a different city. And I really thought when I was pitching it that there are probably people who can't afford to do it much, and to try to sort of illuminate to them all the different places and options so that they would say, okay, like this is the one that's worth doing a trip for, and this is something that would be, unique and fun to do, and to sort of incorporate the game with a vacation or a trip. So, and boy, I mean, it's amazing what you think about the place that you live in before you go see other places. And I still love going to the Bears games here, but I thought our tailgating was like out of control, amazing, and it's really not compared to some other places.
Well, I think you have the luxury of some other things going on in Chicago. Some places are just, Buffalo is a great example of that, actually.
Yes, Kansas City, great tailgating.
Football is life, and there really is nothing outside of that except a little bit of hockey up here.
Yeah.
So you've gone on to do a lot of different things since graduating from Cornell. You mentioned Second City, Fox Sports, now ESPN. Is there any Cornell experiences that you think were really influential or helped prepare you for life as now a national media personality?
Oh, gosh, I would think, the experience in its entirety, just part of that sort of humbling but inspiring position of going from being a smart, accomplished person in high school and then getting somewhere where everybody else is smarter and more accomplished than you. I think it really pushes you, and I think being in an atmosphere where everybody had grand aspirations and ambitions, was a really good setup for the career I'm in, because it is very difficult. It is one no after the other. It is a lot of constantly failing and getting rejected and then having to keep trying. And I think that's easier to take if you've been somewhere where the competition was just super high and where you had to push yourself and continue to try to get better if you wanted to be able to compete with those around you. So yeah, I mean, the experience on the whole, for sure. I think also, you know, I grew up and I loved writing. I didn't necessarily want to be a writer. I found it to be sort of a solitary pursuit, and I'm not 100% sold on sitting in a room and trying to bang out, you know, the next great masterpiece by myself, writing for hours and hours in a cabin in the woods with 80 cats or something. I'm much more social. So that combination of like all the skills that I learned from doing so much writing and reading and literature work at Cornell, and being able to pair that with sort of the sports angle that I got from doing track and from continuing to be a really big fan of sports. And then the social aspect. I mean, man, those girls that I lived with junior, senior year, they taught me how to be a normal, social, slightly attractive human being. I mean, I had really bad eyebrows. I couldn't figure out my hair. Like, I just didn't wear cute clothes. Like, I was really, I needed some guidance, you know. I needed some people to usher me into the adult social world of being a remotely cool person. And so they helped me with that. So I think if you put all of those things together, it sort of made me into the kind of person now who can walk into some athlete party or charity event and not just immediately shrink into a ball of like, oh my God, I'm not worthy. So yeah, I guess it's sort of all of it.
To your defense, I mean, the Cornell and Ithaca climate doesn't always lend itself to a lot of diversity when it comes to style.
Right, but you would anybody watching would laugh if they knew the kind of stuff that we wore to go to BB's, which I don't even think exists anymore. That was the cool bar, and we would wear stuff that you would wear to like a nightclub in New York City in the middle of winter in Ithaca. We thought we were like going out on the town. It was a real embarrassment, but it was fun at the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, though, of how the people you meet really do have a big impact on kind of who you become.
And then, you know, obviously with track, you know, I've always been a very loud person and somewhat of a leader, but after my injury, it was a real sort of shock. I started crying, you know, when I got nominated captain, because I had sort of been away from the team, and I've been trying to help as much as I could while on crutches and sidelined, but I didn't anticipate them seeing me as that person, to lead the team, and that role was really helpful for me, and sort of just beyond my natural sort of leadership tendencies, to really understand what it's like to try to work with, you know, everyone from freshmen to seniors, and with the coaches and all that stuff was really useful just in becoming a leader in an adult sense.
Well, speaking of your time at Cornell, we have another question. I think you kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'll ask it on their behalf. They say, hey, Sarah, what did you major in at Cornell, and how did that lead you to ESPN?
I was an English major, and a lot of people say, why weren't you a communications major? Well, for two reasons. Because I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I actually went to Cornell thinking I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be on Saturday Night Live or be a comedic actress. And because I'd done sports my whole life, all year round, and AAU, Junior Olympics, everything throughout the summer, I'd really never been able to invest myself wholly in drama classes and doing school plays and stuff. So I didn't want to major in that in case it wasn't really what I wanted once I started. So I picked a major in something that I was really interested in. I loved writing, and something that came naturally. And it was also a very freeing major because the restrictions were much looser than something in, say, the ag school. Communications was in the ag school, and it had way more science and math requirements, which is not my cup of tea. Whereas the English major and being part of the art school allowed me to really study a ton of stuff I was interested in, from, you know, marketing and PR, which is actually what I did for the first couple years out of school while trying to audition and stuff. Film classes, music classes, a lot of the more creative pursuits that I was really interested in all fell under that major a lot more easily than something in the ag school. So and I think it contributed greatly to my job, because a lot of people that are pursuing broadcasting careers do not have a writing background the same way that I do. And so for me to be able to, when I first started, offer to write for websites for free just to get my name out somewhere and have something to show people that were interested in hiring me, I was able to, without having to go get a camera or find someone to interview, show that I knew my stuff, and I was able to tell a story and to craft words. And a lot of the people that I come across today asking me for career advice, they just don't have a background. I know a lot of that's just the next generation having, you know, text speak and spell check and writing an email form all the time, which is just terrifying to an English major. It makes me really sad about the death of the English language. But yeah, I mean, that writing side of things is a massive part of how I've been able to sort of get where I am.
So I wanted to ask you about that because a follow-up, because I think there might be some people watching that are kind of interested in your field, and broadcasting is a very tough industry to break into. So what would be your advice to young Cornellians or others who aspire to be a journalist like yourself? You just kind of mentioned the free blogging, things like that. What were kind of the things that got you in the door?
Okay. There's a couple things that everyone will always tell you, and they're very true, and that is that no job is too beneath you, especially if you're a Cornell person who walks out of there thinking that you are owed the world because you're smart and you went to Cornell. When I moved to LA, some of the jobs that I did to make money when I first got there were hawking Cadillac Escalades at a golf tournament by pointing to them, Kelly Bundy style. I was a boxing ring girl in a casino in East LA one night. I dressed up as a video game character for the E3 conference. I flipped a fake egg on Hollywood Boulevard for Top. I mean, I really did the dumbest, most pointless jobs ever that you could have 0 IQ for, and I had to because I didn't have money, and I moved out there trying to pursue something that you don't make any money in for a very long time. So they'll tell you no job is beneath you. They'll tell you to be very, very diverse in your skill set, because you know, a lot of people look at broadcasting and they think, okay, well, if I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to end up writing for some, you know, big time website or magazine. I'm going to get sent out and flown out to interview people. Or if I'm a broadcaster, I'm going to have a camera crew and makeup people and whatever. When you're starting out, you are probably going to do your own camera work, and then you're going to have to upload it to your computer. You're going to have to learn how to use iMovie, which I still edit a lot of my pieces myself for ESPN, the worldwide leader. And I still oftentimes edit my own video pieces because I like the way I do it better and because I can. Like I said, writing and reading and communicating is so important, so don't lose those skills because of the way the world has embraced technology, because those face-to-face interactions and also the ability to sort of catch people's eye by letter or by email or by some sort of written communication, those are things that become very important. And the number one thing for me, and I think how things started to change, was when I just embraced who I am and what I'm good at, and I tried to think about what it is about me that would make someone think I was going to do a better job than all of the other people that were auditioning or interviewing. And I read this book when I moved to LA, and it was for aspiring actors, and this reference will go over the head of anyone who is younger than probably 30, but there was a guy named Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, yeah.
Very weird comedian guy who like almost half stuttered, half talked, and like spit. It just a very weird dude.
If you haven't seen the Police Academy series, go watch.
So he was in Police Academy. He was in a really bad movie with a horse that I can't remember, but I'm sure I saw
Hot to Trot.
Hot to Trot, yes. Okay. So this book was talking about how, you know, you have to embrace who you are, and you have to be your own PR management firm. You have to believe that whoever you are is going to get you where you want to be, and you have to sell it to everybody around you until you have other people to sell it for you. And whoever you are and whatever you are that's unique, you have to own it, because you might not think that there's a space for that, but if you make a space for it, there will be. And nobody wanted a Bobcat Goldthwait. No one was like, hey, you know what we really need for this movie? A guy who like half speaks, half spits, and then stutters, and you can barely understand him, and he sounds like he's getting like goosed every time he talks. Like, nobody wanted that, but he made it happen. Same with like Pee Wee Herman, or like, you know, there's so many instances of people who their weirdness became their greatness. And so when I read that, I thought, okay, what do I want to do, and what am I good at? I love to be funny. I love making people laugh. I love sports, and I'm a writer. So I took those things together, and I said, okay, I don't see any women in the field right now that get to be funny. but this was before Michelle Beadle came around, and she's really the only other woman in sports that I feel a kinship with as far as having the same sort of take and approach to things. But it used to just be sort of bubbly sidelines reporters or very serious anchors. And Kenny Mayne doing the main event, which is very satirical and dry and sarcastic, was totally my style. But it was a guy, and I was like, there's no women doing this. I don't know if they want women doing this, but I'm just going to start it. I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to start combining sort of regular sports coverage with my comedic stuff and see if anyone wants it. And as soon as I started to just embrace who I was instead of trying to fit into some idea of what I thought they wanted, things started to really take off. So my best advice is to figure out what that is about you, and hopefully you have something, and then really embrace it and milk it, and make sure whenever you have an interview or a meeting or you talk to people or you're networking, make sure that they get that from you, that the initial thing they get from you is the person that you want them to know that you are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And even as successful as you have been, do you still feel like there's a little bit of resistance to kind of wanting to break the mold of what a woman sports broadcaster is?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I still deal with a lot of crap BS, particularly now that social media allows fans to so freely interact with people. And in some ways I love that, and in other ways it reminds me that there's still people out there who think that sports are for men, which boggles the mind. But I think what's been nice for me is, especially recently, I've been getting a lot of really awesome feedback to the stuff that I like to do and I want to do. And I just signed a new contract with ESPN for 3 years, and a lot of it is doing more development into the stuff I want to do. So I have some pilots for online shows coming up and some meetings for a untitled sort of Sarah Spain online show project that's going to really let me take all that stuff that I love and pair it with sports in a way that's pretty unique. So yeah, I mean, there's still people that don't like it, and there's still people that don't get my sarcasm. I always say, like, a guy could start a broadcast and say, all right, let's go down to Miami where the Bulls are taking on the Heat. There's LeBron James warming up. Never seen him play, but I heard he's pretty good. And everyone would be like, oh, that's funny. But if a woman says it, they're like, what? She's never seen LeBron? What is this woman doing on my TV? It's really frustrating. So I really have to just continue to own my satire and my sarcasm. And if people don't get it, or if they think it's, they don't feel comfortable with it coming from me, then I just have to keep pushing it even harder until it becomes more commonplace.
Well, that sounds great. Please keep us in the loop as those things develop, because I think the Big Red family would love to tune in and support you, because those.
Cool. I would love the Big Red family to support me.
And if you can somehow rope in like a game at Lina with one of those series, maybe.
That would be awesome.
Maybe you can get the show back on campus.
That would be awesome. Oberman and I will come do a show from Lina.
That would be great. That would be exciting, I think, for everybody.
We'll bring along Doug Murray, class of, I think he was a year later than me, 03. But he's doing all right for himself as well, hockey player.
Yeah, and I think you guys could get a crowd out there bigger than Lee Corso gets before college getting.
That is true, and if anybody knows Doug Murray, they know he can get a crowd anywhere at any time.
So we have one last question coming in from the audience, and then I'm going to let you go. And they just want to know, how many pairs of Air Jordans do you own?
I actually own 0 pairs of Jordan shoes. What's really funny is, like, there's people who aren't that into Jordan, and that's still the aspect of him that they collect and have, tons of. And I'm obsessed with Jordan, and that's the one aspect that I never got into. There wasn't a women's line for hoops, and I was more dedicated to what worked for the game than what I wanted to wear, at the time. And so I have Jordan gear. I have Jordan T-shirts and stuff like that, but I've never gotten into the shoes. I just can't pull off that look. You have to have that combination of, like, sporty and spicy, and I haven't quite nailed it with, like, the high top Jordans with the skinny jean thing. I'm still working on it.
Yeah, I've just never been able to afford it.
Yeah, well, that too. That too.
And if
I do have a lot of D Rose shoes now because of Adidas.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, style. I was never able to pull off shoe style. I have a size 15. You can never find those in stores.
Yeah. Then you got to just go with the straight boats.
Yeah. Dad would say, "Oh, we're going to Payless. Deal with it."
Yeah. I should get at least 1 pair of Jordans. You know what I'll do is next time I'm near, like, a stylist for some show I'm working on or something, I'll be like, all right, help me in the right direction. I need to find a way to rock. I'm going to the Bulls home opener tomorrow. Maybe I should invest.
There you go.
I'll tweet it out if I invest.
I was going to say, Instagram it, tweet it, whatever you got to do. We want to see those Jordans if you have them. All right.
I'll work on it.
And I guess I have one last question, and that's: is there any way that the deep dish at the Nines can compete with anything in Chicago?
Oh, deep dish at the Nines was so good. I actually was back for my reunion last year. 2012. And we went to the Nines, and it was still just as delicious as ever. It's not Chicago deep dish, but it is quite good. And I had the Nines was a great spot because you'd always get great musicians before they got really famous, and I still remember it fondly. But Eduardo's, if you go to Chicago, everyone says Lou Malnati's. It's Eduardo's. Eduardo's is the best deep dish in Chicago.
I think I've been to Chicago a couple times recently. I think the former one you just mentioned there, I think, was the one.
Lou Malnati's and Gino's East. Those are
I think that's where I was directed to. So next time
those are good.
Eduardo's.
Yes.
Eduardo was my Spanish name in high school in class. So I think
there you go.
I would confuse. I wouldn't think that was Italian if somebody had told me.
Wait, wasn't your Spanish name in class supposed to be the Spanish version of your name?
Yeah, but my
Wouldn't
teacher
that be
told me.
Edward?
My teacher told me there was no real Spanish translation for Keith, so she gave me Eduardo.
I don't know about that.
You would think there's got to be something closer.
If I had to guess, you didn't continue with your Spanish learnings for long.
I did not. I took the bare minimum requirements, and I moved on. I feel like I still haven't mastered English yet. So
yes, well, I was one class away from being a French minor at Cornell. I was reading full books in French, and I don't have much cause to use it, unfortunately. Only when I go to France or like the occasional person that I run into who speaks French, but Spanish would have been a little more useful, especially for someone named Sarah Spain who looks Latin.
Yeah.
I could have been already just owning ESPN Deportes. Just wasn't thinking ahead.
And I guess for the Chicago fans out there, is there any hope on the horizon for the poor Cubs?
Yes. So do not listen to the people who only look at the surface level of the team, because the only way to remake a baseball team that was as poorly constructed as the Cubs is to start from the minor leagues. And in the latest poll, the Cubs have the third-ranked farm system, I think third or fifth, depending on whether you're looking at Baseball Prospectus or a different ranker, but the third or fifth ranked farm system in all of the major leagues. And those people are going to start coming up all at the same time. And people are really quick to jump on Theo Epstein for not having turned things around yet and for having two terrible, 100-loss seasons. But he's really doing it exactly as he said. He said, we're going to be awful. We're going to sell off pieces in order to get prospects that will then pay off down the road, because there's no point in trading for a big-name player now if they're going to be completely deserted in a sea of other players that aren't quite ready yet. So I have 100% faith that within the next season we'll start to see a couple benefits, and by 2014/2015 is when really those prospects that we paid the big dough and made the trades for are going to start to come around. So, yes, Cubs fans, for once, we do have a reason to actually be enthusiastic and hopeful for the future. Just a little more patience is needed.
Well, you heard it there first, Cubs fans. 2014-2015, the end of the World Series drought.
No. Probably one more year for the actually winning.
One more year for the World Series?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. We'll go with 15-16.
Well, certainly as a Buffalo fan, I completely sympathize with teams that are hungry for a championship and desperate. So I didn't tell you this before I asked you to do the interview, but I am married to a Cardinals fan from St. Louis. So I thought I'd get that out of the way at the end here. So it's hard to watch.
She's busy right now, huh?
Yep. She's at home, not watching me doing this web conversation right now, but I'm hoping I'm going home to them having a lead. It'd be nice to see a Game 7. But
unfortunately, I'm rooting against you.
I don't blame you. I'm a Mets fan and I'm a Bills fan, so there's just no winning on my side. It's just terrible.
Jump on some sort of bandwagon. Do you like Oklahoma City? Jump on the Thunder bandwagon.
I don't really have an NBA team. I'm
Perfect.
Syracuse Orange, dedicated to Syracuse Orange.
All right.
And if Cornell makes another Sweet 16,
there you go.
That'd be exciting too.
My boyfriend's from Wisconsin, and we went to go see Cornell, Wisconsin at a watch party at Harry Carey's because the GM is a Cornell guy.
Yeah.
And and he expected it to be a couple, like, dozen people, and that Wisconsin was going to blow them out, and instead hundreds of Cornell fans gathered to watch Wisconsin go down. It was truly magical.
That was a good run. That was a good run. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining us. I know you have a ton going on, and for the people watching, please check Sarah out. Check her website out, sarahspain.com, and take a look at No Spain, No Game on ESPNW. Follow her on Twitter at Sarah Spain, and keep an eye out for these new series coming out. Well, we'll be excited to help you promote those and get it out to the Cornell family. But I know, again, that you have a lot going on, so we really appreciate you taking an hour of your evening and spending it with us and other Cornellians.
Sure. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right. Well, we'll see you soon. Sarah Spain, class of 2002, doing great things for ESPN, and we hope we'll get her back on campus soon. Thank you all for tuning in and for submitting your questions. We'll be back on the air, I'm sure, shortly, and we'll let you know soon when that will be. So thanks again, and have a happy Halloween out there, everybody.
You too.
And Fletch, good luck with your costume.
He says hi.
Hi, Fletch. Good night, Fletch.